The young lady's betrothed husband was cursed to bring death to his wives. Every concubine he took met her demise. The master wished to annul the engagement, but she stubbornly refused. A daughter of the Pei family remains faithful unto death. I'd rather die than marry another. The capital praised her loyalty and righteousness. Even the crown prince admired her greatly. With the wedding approaching, I was chosen as a warming bed maid to be sent to the Minute Marquis's household. Before leaving, the young mistress secretly slipped me a vial of poison. Her smile seemed laced with venom too. Lianhua, you know what to do, don't you? Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. Lianhua, tomorrow will count as your wedding night too. I've heard the Marquis's heir has certain peculiarities in bed. She pressed a handkerchief to her lips, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. This is the spring bewilderment powder. Make him drink it, and you'll feel better. Pei Shu gazed at me with pity, her hand hovering in midair, a small, unremarkable vial pinched between her slender fingers. I recognized that vial. Inside was the priceless poison known as Qianji, colorless, odorless, lethal with just a drop, leaving even the coroner clueless about the cause of death. Miss, I trembled like a startled kitten, my fur standing on end, instinctively backing away. So, you know what this is? She looked somewhat surprised, a flicker of unreadable light passing through her eyes as the corners of her lips curled slightly. Pei Shu had always been gentle and generous, praised by everyone in the capital. Even now, a smile lingered on her face. Lianhua, among all the maids in the household, you're the cleverest. In just a few months, you've risen from a kitchen scullery maid to my personal attendant. I trust you can help me, can't you? She shoved the bottle into my hand. Once this matter is settled, I'll find a way to rescue you, release your indenture papers, and arrange for you to become the proper wife of some impoverished scholar's family. I kept my head lowered. Her words sounded so sweet, yet I didn't believe a single one. I knew Pei Shu's secret. She'd sooner see me dead. The last time she took out this bottle, Kui Yinyang in the mansion, who was pregnant at the time, died inexplicably. The child in her womb was already 6 months old. And every physician who examined her pulse declared it a boy. Had he been born, he would have been Pei Shu's half-brother, the only male heir in the household. Seeing me bite my lip and shake my head repeatedly, Pei Shu smiled even more gently. If you refuse to go, then forget it, I'll simply send someone else. Young mistress, everyone in the capital calls you the living guanyin. Lianhua Flower thanks you for your great kindness. If you ever have any orders in the future, I'll go through fire and water without hesitation. I fell to my knees with a thud and kowtowed repeatedly. But I chose you to be my bed-warming maid, yet you retreated at the critical moment. I'm afraid I can no longer keep you by my side. She pinched my chin and gently lifted it, clicking her tongue in admiration. What a pretty little face, truly delightful. No wonder Aunt Zhao from the kitchen came begging my mother the other day, wanting to match you with her foolish son, out of pity for you. I told mother I wanted to select you as my bed-warming maid. That's why she refused Zhao's request. Now, she released her fingers and laughed even louder. In a few days, we'll probably be calling you little Zhao Mema. Zhao Mema was the mistress's trusted confidant, having managed the kitchen for many years, enjoying abundant perks in the household. The only pity was that she bore a simple-minded son in her lifetime, a man well past 30 who remained as foolish as a child. Apart from eating, drinking, and relieving himself, he would only leer greedily at the young, pretty maids, groping them shamelessly. When I first started working in the kitchen, the kind-hearted Granny Liu told me to smear my face with stove ashes. Lianhua, if that fool from the Zhao family takes a fancy to you, you'd be better off hanging yourself with a rope. I heeded her words and avoided Madame Zhao at all costs, even going so far as to become the young mistress's personal maid. The day I entered the young mistress's courtyard, I knelt under the moonlight with tears streaming down my face. Lianhua gives thanks to heaven for allowing me to leave the kitchen and escape the clutches of Madame Zhao and her son. In this life, I don't seek great wealth or status, only to serve my young mistress well and save enough silver to secure my future. When I come of age, I'll take my indenture and leave the manor, finding a poor scholar's family to become an honorable wife. I stared at Pei Shu in shock as she gently shook the bottle in her hand, smiling at me. The night wind was cold, and as I knelt on the ground, the chill in my knees slowly seeped into my heart. I knelt for so long that I thought the bitter wind had already shattered me to pieces, but it hadn't. My body still had to linger on in this world, only my heart was broken. Lianhua, I wish to share your worries, my lady. My fingers stiffened as I took the bottle. Pei Shu smiled and turned to leave. She was utterly pleased with herself. walking away as swiftly as the wind. Watching her retreating figure, I straightened my back and let a smile identical to Pei Shu's curl at my lips. Pei Shu, did you know, that night when I entered your courtyard, it was only after hearing your footsteps that I deliberately said those words. That day, I revealed my weakness so you would choose me as your bed warmer. Today, my theatrics have made you trust me completely, and tomorrow, I shall step on your shoulders to leap over these devouring high walls of the Pei residence. A warming bed maid was a custom in the capital. Noble and wealthy families, fearing their sons-in-law might have hidden ailments that would make their daughters suffer later, would send the young lady's personal maidservant to test the marriage before the wedding. This was originally a coveted position among maidservants, for even at worst, a warming bed maid could eventually become a concubine. But I was different in the eyes of the Pei household. I was being sent to my death. The heir of Marquis Minute was handsome and accomplished in both civil and martial arts, yet he was fated to bring misfortune to his wives. Rumor had it that just 2 days prior, another unjustly deceased chambermaid had been dragged out through the back gate of Marquis Min's residence. Lian Hua, you must be very careful. Despite the objections of the master and mistress, Pei Shu insisted on seeing me off. She even bestowed upon me numerous gold and pearl ornaments, dressing me up in dazzling finery. Clutching the sedan chair curtain, she wept through several handkerchiefs, unwilling to part for the longest time. Miss Pei truly has a heart of gold. No wonder people call her the living Guanyin. What use is a living Guanyin? In a few days she'll be married into the Minute Marquis household, and then the living Guanyin will become a dead Guanyin. Bah, what nonsense are you spouting? I must go pray at the Jade Buddha temple to plead for Miss Pei's sake. What is it you seek? The passerby's voice gradually faded away. To plead that the heir of the Minute Marquis household meets an early death. The crowd was startled at first, but after a long pause, some actually began to agree. Indeed, I see the Crown Prince's noble bearing makes him the perfect match for Miss Pei. The sedan curtain fell, cutting off Pei Shu's suddenly radiant smile. So that's their scheme, I murmured, but whatever schemes she had in mind were none of my concern. After tonight, if all went well, I could finally escape her grasp. I tightened my grip on the bottle in my hand, silently calculating my next move. Suddenly, the sedan chair stopped swaying, and I was helped into a room. Miss Lianhua, please rest for a while, our young master will arrive shortly. I looked up and smiled faintly. The maid across from me was momentarily stunned by my radiant appearance. It took her a long moment to regain her composure, her face filled with regret. I understand that a dying peerless beauty often evokes even greater pity. I touched my deliberately adorned sorrowful face, glimpsed the figure approaching leisurely by the window from the corner of my eye, and deliberately lowered my head in feigned alarm. I could only hope that Marquis Min's heir was also a man who cherished feminine beauty, but this time, luck didn't seem to be on my side. Before I could even put on the practiced, coquettish expression I'd rehearsed, the man before me had already smiled and stripped me bare, then flipped his hand to press a gleaming dagger against my throat. Another one, he said, so beautiful it stirs pity. I almost can't bring myself to do it. Tell you what. I'll be merciful, you choose. How would you like to be killed? I smiled faintly, pushed aside the blade in his hand, and offered him a cup of wine. I'm not like them, I'm both beautiful and clever. Would your highness care to collaborate with me? The wine was excellent, clear and mellow. The medicine was equally fine, colorless and odorless. Seeing me stripped completely naked yet showing no sign of evasion, remaining so composed, Minute Zishan's eyes sparkled with unusual brilliance. He sheathed his dagger and looked at me with a smile. You see the dagger yet show no surprise. Could it be you already knew those women before weren't actually cursed to death? I smiled faintly and extended the wine in my hand forward. Of course, I knew. I wanted to escape the Pei residence by becoming a bed-warming maid at the Minute Marquis's household, but that didn't mean I was willing to be cursed to death. After making up my mind, I secretly went to the mass burial ground to find the corpses of those maidservants. Though their bodies were already decomposed beyond recognition, without exception, each bore terrifying scratch marks all over, with a single clean stab wound to the chest as the fatal injury. Therefore, I concluded that these maidservants hadn't been cursed to death, they were murdered by Minute Zishan. Since this wasn't supernatural but merely man-made, executing my plan became much easier. Minute Zishan also began to laugh. I enjoy working with smart people, but I need to know what skills you bring to the table. How about, his eyes darted as he suddenly snatched the wine cup, pinched my chin, and forced the liquid down my throat. How about you first tell me how you plan to survive after drinking this poisoned wine? I couldn't dodge in time. and a full cup of wine poured into my mouth, instantly twisting my stomach with excruciating pain. In my dazed state, I heard Minute Zishan casually order, "Throw him into the mass grave." My ears buzzed violently as gushes of blood sprayed from my mouth. I'd seen concubine Kui's final moments, just like mine now. Cough, cough. When I awoke from boundless darkness, I found myself already lying in the mass grave. The surroundings were eerily quiet, the air thick with the pungent stench of corpses. My limbs remained numb, according to the ancient texts in Father's collection. It would take another hour before I could move freely. Before being sold to the Pei residents, my family had managed decently. Father was a wandering mountain physician, highly skilled in medicine but unwilling to mingle with nobility and officials, so he took me to the countryside, where we made a living by treating the poor. Alas, a physician cannot heal himself. Father fell gravely ill and passed away. With no money at home, I had no choice but to sell myself. Using the silver from the Pei family to bury him, Father often said he had failed me, leaving nothing but a few tattered books at home, unable even to provide me with a dowry. But Father, those tattered books of yours saved my life today. The book records that after drinking Chenji poison, there is no antidote to cure it. However, if the antidote is taken in advance, the symptoms remain the same after drinking Chenji, but one will recover after feigning death for 2 hours. I looked up at the bright moon and sparse stars in the sky. Though surrounded by countless pale bones, my heart was still filled with boundless joy. At last, my meticulous planning didn't go to waste. I've finally escaped alive. My heart swelled with wild joy as I silently envisioned my happy life after fleeing. First, I'd need to find a way to retrieve my deed of indenture from the Pei residence. As I was lost in thought, I gradually felt a tingling sensation in my limbs, and slowly, sensation returned to my entire body. I rose slowly and began walking toward the mountains beyond. Clap, clap, clap. Suddenly, crisp applause rang out from behind me. As expected, you didn't lie to me. What a clever man, using feigned death to deceive heaven and earth, trying to escape alive. I turned my head in shock, only to see Minute Zishan casually draped in a long robe, his chest half bare, revealing jade-white skin. His long hair was disheveled, as if he'd just woken up. And this terrifying mass burial ground was like his family courtyard, where he could stroll at leisure. He gazed at my face, pale with shock, as if looking at a small beast fallen into a trap. This mass grave is the final resting place for the servants of Marquis Min's household after death. No matter what, you're still someone from the Pei household. Even if you died because of my ill luck, sending you here wouldn't be appropriate. According to custom, you should be properly bathed and dressed. Then return to the Pei household, so your young lady can give you a proper burial. Go, inform the Pei residents to come retrieve the body. He softly instructed the black-clad attendant behind him. Turning back, he looked at me with a harmless smile. Lianhua, is it? Then I'll trouble Miss Lianhua to close her eyes and play dead again, waiting for your young mistress to come fetch you. His voice hissed like a venomous snake flicking its tongue, whispering poisonously in my ear. What a pity, you've failed your mission. I wonder how your precious living Guanyin and true king of hell will treat such a failure. Amidst his sinister laughter, I resignedly closed my eyes. The Pei family arrived swiftly. I had just been carried into the room by Minute Zishan when I heard Pei Shu's heart-wrenching sobs. Lianhua, Lianhua. Behind her followed a white-haired physician, who rushed to my corpse the moment he saw it, pressing his fingers to my pulse and listening intently. After a moment, his face filled with terror as he trembled and said to Pei Shu, Miss Pei, Miss Lianhua wasn't killed by ill fate, she was poisoned. Pei Shu was utterly shocked, even forgetting to wipe the tears streaming down her face. Her lips trembled as she asked, Imperial Physician Zhong, are you telling the truth? The old man wore an arrogant expression. Naturally. I am the most trusted Imperial Physician by His Highness the Crown Prince. If not for His Highness's personal instruction, I wouldn't have come to treat your cold, Miss Pei. His face flushed crimson. I didn't mind examining you, but I never expected you'd make me come see some insignificant maid. Since Miss Pei doesn't trust Zhong's medical skills, you'd better find someone more capable. He cupped his hands in salute and turned to leave. Pei Shu grabbed Physician Zhong's sleeve with a pleading look of distress. Dr. Zhong, please stay. It's not that I doubt your medical skills, it's just, she turned abruptly, pointing accusingly at Minute Zishan. I never imagined the heir of Marquis Minute could be so depraved as to heartlessly poison my maidservant. Tears streamed down her face like pear blossoms in the rain. If you didn't want to marry me, you could have just come to break off the engagement. Why harm innocent people? Hearing this, Imperial Physician Zhong also showed indignation towards Minute Zishan. The young master has gone too far. I will report this truthfully to the Crown Prince upon my return. Minute Zishan let out a scornful laugh. Miss Pei, Physician Zhong, poisoned? What kind of poison? I know absolutely nothing about this. Physician Zhong bristled with anger. You still dare to deny it? Prince Minute, she was poisoned with Chenji venom. Had it not been for me, no one would have recognized it. Chenji venom. Minute Zishan rubbed his chin. I've heard that those poisoned with Chenji die instantly within moments. He suddenly grabbed my wrist, pressing hard on my pulse point. As I cried out in pain, he turned to Pei Shu, whose face had abruptly paled, and laughed. Miss Pei, you're renowned in the capital as the living Guanyin. Who would have thought even your maid possesses miraculous powers, surviving Chenji venom when no one else could? He took out the small vial he had confiscated from me, held it to his nose for a light sniff, then suddenly leaned close to Pei Shu's ear and said in a sickly sweet voice, Miss Pei, would you care to explain why your maid carries a vial filled with deadly aconite poison? And why does this vial bear a fragrance identical to yours, down to the last note? Pei Shu's face turned ashen, her delicate jade-like hands trembling like a sieve. Minute Zishan's eyes flashed briefly before he resumed his elegant demeanor of a refined young master. He fanned himself lightly and murmured, either your Pei family withdraws from the engagement voluntarily, or Miss Pei marries into my Marquis Min's residence as agreed. Choose one of the two. Miss Pei, what say you? Pei Shu's eyes were filled with desolation as she forced a faint smile. Even if the Pei family is to withdraw from the engagement, you must wait until I return home and inform my parents. Lord Minute, today's farce was entirely caused by this reckless girl's willful actions. Her crimson nails secretly dug into the tender flesh of my thigh, twisting viciously. I will take her back to the mansion and beat her to death with rods, to give His Highness an explanation. She gnashed her teeth as if she wanted to tear my flesh from my bones. Minute Zishan, however, raised his hand and gently pushed away her wicked fingers, clutching at me with his fan, sighing softly. Miss Pei, if not for this maid's loyalty, the one who drank the Chenji poison today would have been me. I'll ask you for a personal favor. Why not just give her to me as a chambermaid? That way, we can still honor the marital bond between the Pei and Minute families. He gazed at me tenderly, his eyes seemingly brimming with affection, yet I trembled in terror. Minute Zishan, are you trying to subject me to a fate crueler than being beaten to death with sticks? Sure enough, upon hearing Minute Zishan's words, Pei Shu's stare grew even more terrifying, but the corners of her lips curled into a smile that sent chills down my spine. Prince Minute, please forgive me. I only learned from my mother before coming here that this Lianhua girl already had a marriage arrangement with the son of Nurse Zhao in your household. Unaware of this, I mistakenly chose her as my bed-warming maid. Now that the betrothal between the two families has been dissolved, it's only right that I take her back, returning the jade intact to its owner. Though she smiled at me, her eyes held no warmth. My teeth chattered uncontrollably as I desperately clutched at Minute Zishan's sleeve. Casting him a pleading look, Minute Zishan rested the fan handle against his chin and smiled faintly. Miss Pei, only an intact jade can be returned to Zhao. This Lianhua blossom, having shared a spring breeze with me, can no longer be considered a member of your Pei household. Pei Shu was momentarily speechless. Then after a long pause, she finally smiled gracefully. The deed of sale for Lianhua is still held in my residence, so she cannot yet be considered a member of your Marquis Minute household. If the heir truly favors her, why not take her as a noble concubine? When the time comes, I will certainly present her deed of sale as a congratulatory gift. However, given Her Highness Princess Min's esteemed status as the matriarch, I wonder if she would consent. Minute Zishan frowned, clicked his tongue, then bent down to pat my pale, cold cheek. My lovely girl, your master is truly formidable. I can't save you anymore. He pried my fingers loose one by one from where they clutched his sleeve, then left swaying his fan with a desolate air. Pei Shu gave a cold laugh, not even glancing at me as she said sternly, Nanny Zhao, hurry up and take your precious daughter-in-law back to the manor. I'll reward you with 50 taels of silver. Make sure today's wedding is lively and unforgettable for our dear Mother Zhao. Many thanks, young mistress. Mother Zhao rolled up her sleeves with a sinister grin as she advanced toward me. Suddenly, a tall and hideously ugly man sprang out from behind her. In his hands was a half-cooked roast chicken which he tore into savagely, his teeth smeared with dripping blood. A pair of turbid eyes glowed eerily green like ghosts. The moment he caught sight of me, he began flailing his limbs in excitement. Hehe, time to take a new bride, Ma. This bride looks even whiter than roasted chicken. Do you think she'll taste just as tender and delicious, like ravenous wolves?" The mother and son closed in on me. At this moment I was trapped in mortal peril, about to plunge into eternal damnation. "Stop!" Suddenly, a commanding voice rang out. An elderly woman adorned in glittering jewels appeared outside the door. "Princess Chang." Pei Shu and physician Zhong stiffened simultaneously, bowing in reverence. How grand the Pei manor must be, daring to send even their maidservants to shout at my minute Marquis estate. Do they think this old woman is too aged and feeble to protect her household? Or, her gaze turned sharp, seeming to pierce straight through Pei Shu's heart. Does Miss Pei believe she's already securely seated on the crown princess's throne? Pei Shu's face turned pale. This humble girl wouldn't dare. "Your Highness, it's this lowly servant from my household who committed the grave offense of insulting the young master. I will take her back for proper punishment." Ensuring the young master's satisfaction, with silver-tongued eloquence, she skillfully redirected the conflict towards me and Minute Zishan. The Grand Princess snorted, ignoring her as she stepped aside to reveal a man with the grace of an immortal, holding a feathered fan and wearing a silk headband. At a glance, his eyes lit up with joy upon seeing me. "It's her. Congratulations, Grand Princess." Felicitations to the Grand Princess. The Grand Princess also beamed, clasping her hands together and murmuring prayers under her breath. "Grand Preceptor, now that we've found the lucky star, what about my Shana? The young master is naturally free from evil influences now and will never bring misfortune to his wives again. The Grand Princess will soon have a precious grandchild." The Grand Princess couldn't stop smiling, her gaze toward me brimming with maternal affection. "Your name is Hua, isn't it? What a good child, just look at your face. It radiates fortune. Someone, come and attend to Lian Hua." She froze momentarily, then leaned close to the imperial preceptor for an extended whispered conversation before finally appearing to reach a decision. "Attendants, prepare ceremonial robes for concubine Lian Hua." "What?" Pei Shu's face darkened with fury. "Your Highness, Lian Hua is merely my personal maid, isn't conferring concubine status." The princess cast a sidelong glance at her. "She's just a concubine, what's the big deal? Since Miss Pei is so scrupulous about her duties, the world calls you the living Guanyin, but Guanyin is a goddess. Given your humble status as the daughter of a mere fourth-rank vice minister, isn't this title far too presumptuous for you?" Pei Shu was rendered speechless, her face burning with humiliation and anger. After offering Princess Chang a hasty curtsy, she stormed out with her entourage. "Wait," Princess Chang called after her. "Since Lianhua Blossom is now Shana's concubine, Miss Pei must return her deed of ownership." The veins behind Pei Shu's ears bulged violently, her usually serene and dignified face contorting beyond recognition. She took the deed of indenture from Madame Zhao and slapped it firmly into my palm. "Congratulations, concubine." I held that single flimsy sheet of paper. Yet it felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds. The high walls of the Pei residence, I had finally crossed them. What skillful tactics, second consort. As night fell, Minute Zishan reclined on the couch and shot me a glance. "Tactics? Which instance is the young master referring to?" "You," Minute Zishan's expression darkened as he swiftly rose and strode toward me. "You deliberately laced the silk threads in the Funjo wine for me to discover. Good, since we're to cooperate. If the heir has tested my capabilities, shouldn't I also test his?" I picked up a piece of pastry from the plate with my fingertips and took a small bite. "Oh, and is the concubine satisfied with what she sees?" Minute Zishan quickly regained his composure, leaning forward to pour himself a cup of tea. I nodded with a smile. "Barely. How did you manage to invite the state preceptor?" I heard the state preceptor was just a wandering Taoist in the countryside before, and only by chance became the state preceptor. "How much does the young master know about him?" Minute Zishan shook his head. "The state preceptor's identity is mysterious. Even though my mother is the eldest princess, all we know is that His Majesty encountered him by chance during an incognito inspection tour. It is said that half a year ago, he encountered a lucky star's enlightenment, and his cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds, granting him knowledge of past and future. Because he accurately guessed several of His Majesty's concerns, he soared like a carp leaping over the dragon gate, becoming the imperial preceptor. Indeed, the imperial preceptor did receive enlightenment from a lucky star, and just now, the eldest princess mentioned that a lucky star has arrived at her residence. Young master, do you think these two lucky stars might be the same person?" Minute Zishan stared at me blankly, his fan slipping from his hand and falling to the ground. "Lianhua. Stop joking. I don't know what method you used today to make the Imperial Preceptor speak on your behalf. Since you refuse to explain, I won't press you, but you needn't resort to such supernatural nonsense to brush me off. Don't forget I too am cursed with a wife-killing fate. He rose to his full height and strode away. At the doorway, he suddenly stopped. Don't think that becoming the side consort of the heir apparent means you can rest easy, after Pei Shu breaks off the engagement with me. She's to marry the crown prince. Even with her status, she may not necessarily become the crown princess, but you should understand the difference in status between a side consort to the heir apparent and a side consort to the crown prince. He turned his head and looked at me coldly, the corner of his mouth curling up. You said we were in a cooperative relationship. Unfortunately, as it stands, I helped you escape the Pei family, yet you cost me a living guanyin of a fiancé. If Pei Shu ever decides to come after you in the future, what leverage do you have to make me help you again? I brushed the pastry crumbs from my hands and gracefully approached Minute Zishan, wrapping my arms around his neck as I gazed intently into his dark, inky eyes. Just a mere crown prince's concubine, what's so impressive about her? If I can help you ascend the throne, then Pei Shu will be nothing but dirt beneath my feet. Why should I fear her? Only, this path won't be easy. Are you willing to give it a try, third prince? The icy mask on Minute Zishan's face finally shattered into pieces as he drew his dagger and pressed it against my throat. Who the hell are you? His hand trembled slightly. The razor-sharp blade leaving thin trails of blood on my skin, I gently lifted the blade aside with my fingers and poured myself a cup of tea without ceremony. Since the Grand Preceptor can foresee both past and future, how could the lucky star who enlightened him not possess the same ability? Now, do you think I'm qualified to cooperate with you? Minute Zishan's eyes churned with emotions, shock, bewilderment, fear. Before finally settling into calm, he shook out a handkerchief, pressed it against the wound on my neck, lifted my chin with a faint smile. Deal, my concubine. He lay lazily beside me, turning slightly as he spoke. Since your lucky star can see both past and future, why don't you teach me what should we do next? I closed my eyes as countless fragments surged rapidly through my mind. On the first night I was sold into the Pei household, for some unknown reason, I began seeing many inexplicable scenes. For instance, Pei Shu poisoning Kui Inyang with silk thread toxin, Minute Zishan using a dagger to kill one chambermaid after another. They were spies sent by palace consorts who doubted his true identity. To protect his illegitimate child with his white moonlight, the emperor sent him to be raised by the Grand Princess. And yet, I trembled slightly. After Pei Shu married the crown prince, she sent me to his bedchamber to secure his favor, then drowned me in a lake while I was pregnant to vie for his affection. That scene, though only fragmented in my mind, was terrifyingly real, as if I had lived through it in a past life. So, from the next day onward, I resolved at all costs to break free from the shackles of fate and ensure my own safe survival. Tomorrow outside the palace, you will encounter the crown prince and Pei Shu. They will humiliate you for marrying a lowly concubine. Does the concubine want me to temporarily avoid confrontation and endure it? No. Strike them hard, so hard they go crying to His Majesty. Your Highness, I heard you had a joyous occasion last night, taking in a beautiful concubine as lovely as flowers and jade. I lifted the curtain to look outside, only to see Minute Zishan being intercepted by the crown prince and Pei Shu the moment he stepped down from his carriage. The crown prince was about the same age as Minute Zishan, with similarly deep ink-black pupils. Though now his eyes were slightly red at the corners from sheer anger, Pei Shu, abandoning her usual dignified composure, clung to the crown prince's arm like a delicate bird, whimpering pitifully. What's this? Has your highness come to seek justice for my former fiancé? Minute Zishan fanned himself with a folding fan, raising an eyebrow at Pei Shu. The crown prince turned livid with rage and swung a fist toward Minute Zishan's face. Pei Shu quickly grabbed the crown prince's arm, then bowed gracefully to Minute Zishan with a gentle smile. Young master misunderstands. We came today sincerely to offer our congratulations. After all, Lianhua has served by my side for so many years. Now that she's found a good home, I'm truly happy for her. Miss Pei certainly knows how to speak pleasantly. Since you miss Lianhua so much, when Miss Pei marries the crown prince, I'll bring her to your residence to pay respects. We can all gather properly then. The crown prince snorted coldly. What kind of lowly wretch dares to bring such filth into my palace? Marquis, do you take me for a fool? Minute Zishan's smile vanished as he placed his folded fan across his chest and bowed to the crown prince. Your Highness, I beg you to choose your words carefully. I advise you not to speak of lowly people again. I am the crown prince. And I shall say whatever I please. Your concubine comes from the countryside, she is indeed a lowly person. Minute Zishan's pale temples pulsed with veins as he gripped the crown prince's shoulders, his teeth clenched. Your Highness, the crown prince sneered coldly. What, do you dare strike me? He suddenly punched Minute Zishan in the face, knocking him to the ground. Your Highness the Crown Prince, this is my final warning to you, choose your words and actions carefully. Minute Zishan wiped the blood from the corner of his lips and spoke coldly. Seeing this, the Crown Prince laughed instead of growing angry. Since the heir apparent chooses to associate with lowly commoners, then in my eyes he is no better than a lowly commoner himself. A lowly commoner, how dare you strike the Crown Prince? By the time the palace attendants summoned the Emperor, the Crown Prince and Minute Zishan were already rolling on the ground in a brawl. Their robes were disheveled, and both faces were smeared with blood. Stopped, the Emperor roared. Speak, what happened? Pei Shu quickly knelt down. Your Majesty, the Crown Prince kindly congratulated the prince on taking a concubine, but the prince responded by throwing punches, beating the Crown Prince until she helped the Crown Prince up, deliberately displaying his blooded forehead before the Emperor. You say? He pointed at the eunuchs standing in attendance around them. As Miss Pei said, it was the heir who overstepped his bounds first by striking the Crown Prince. The eunuchs spoke with timid hesitation. The Emperor cast an imperceptibly pained glance at Minute Zishan, who sat cross-legged on the ground, gritting his teeth as he tended to his wounds. You are all the Crown Prince's men, and your words may be biased. I wish to hear from others, Your Majesty. This subject was also present at the scene, a middle-aged man with an immortal's bearing, holding a feather fan and wearing a silk scarf, gave a slight bow. The Emperor's eyes lit up. The State Preceptor has always been fair, please speak. The State Preceptor's wise gaze swept over the faces of those present, each harboring their own thoughts. Indeed, the young master struck first against the Crown Prince. The Emperor's face was filled with disappointment as he waved his hand dismissively. Guards. The heir of Marquis Minute has committed insubordination and acted improperly. Administer 80 strokes of the rod and confine him to Marquis Min's residence for 3 months. The Crown Prince and Pei Shu smirked triumphantly, while Minute Zishan suddenly raised his head, his piercing gaze directed straight at me inside the carriage. Wait, the Grand Preceptor suddenly stopped the guards who were stepping forward with their staffs. What kind of lowly wretch dares to bring filth into my Crown Prince's residence? Prince Heir, do you look down upon me? Your Highness, I advise you to choose your words carefully. Such terms as lowly wretch should never pass your lips. I am the Crown Prince, I'll say whatever I please. That concubine of yours came from the countryside, she is low-born by nature. Your Highness, what, you dare to strike me? Your Highness the Crown Prince, this is my final warning, choose your words and actions carefully. If the heir insists on mingling with lowly commoners, then in my eyes, he too is lowly. And as for lowly people, how could I, the exalted Crown Prince, not have the right to strike them? The crowd on the scene was stunned, and the Emperor turned to look at the State Preceptor. State Preceptor, this is, I have some knowledge of ventriloquism. These are the exact words spoken by the Crown Prince and the heir just now, without a single word altered. His imitation of the Crown Prince and Minute Zishan's voices was so lifelike that the Emperor naturally had no reason to doubt. The Emperor's face gradually turned from red to livid, his hands trembling uncontrollably. Suddenly, he snatched the court rod from a guard and struck the Crown Prince heavily. You unfilial son! He paid no heed to the prince's cries of pain, striking harder with each blow. Have all your studies gone to the dogs? What do you mean by lowly commoners? I have always prided myself on loving my people as my own children. If those from the countryside are all deemed lowly, are you implying that I, too, am lowly? The Crown Prince's blood dripped onto his dragon robe, yet he showed no intention of stopping. The palace attendants had never seen their usually gentle sovereign erupt in such fury, and they trembled in fear. But I knew all too well, the Emperor's cherished love had been a country girl. The Empress Dowager, despising her humble origins, had forbidden her entry into the palace, even while pregnant. She was only permitted to live in the firewood shed of the imperial estate on the outskirts of the capital. Due to the harsh conditions, she died from postpartum hemorrhage after giving birth to Minute Zishan. The Emperor was deeply grieved and, upon ascending the throne, resolved to reform. Determined to alleviate Yu Kingdom's excessively severe class divisions, who would have thought the future Crown Prince would utter such words? Completely overturning the governance philosophy he had upheld his entire life, how could this not enrage the Emperor? He gasped for breath as he pushed aside the palace attendants and the royal astrologer who tried to dissuade him, pointing at the Crown Prince writhing on the ground and wailing. The Crown Prince has behaved improperly, reckless and foolish in his madness, 80 strokes of the cane, then confine him to his residence for 3 months, turning his head. He looked at Minute Zishan with a complicated gaze. You've been taught well by the royal sister. As the farce came to an end, Minute Zishan climbed into the carriage and looked at me, gently tending to his wounds. Today's spectacle wasn't just about venting anger by beating up the Crown Prince, was it? Of course not. I smiled faintly, pressing my lips together. Besides making the Emperor disappointed in the Crown Prince's ability to govern, what else? I extended 2 fingers. Once this matter comes to light, not only will the Emperor be disappointed in the Crown Prince, but also the court officials and the common people. They will all turn their favor towards you, the heir of Marquis Minute. If the Crown Prince is placed under house arrest, then the important mission of visiting Chu will fall upon you. Minute Zishan's eyes sparkled with light as he suddenly reached out and tapped the tip of my nose. The Divine Martial Army, so this is your scheme, I nodded. The border conflict between you and Chu is on the verge of breaking out. At court, the ministers are embroiled in endless debates, fiercely arguing over whether to advocate for war or peace. This diplomatic mission to Chu is precisely to negotiate this matter. If you can grasp His Majesty's thoughts on this matter, then the Divine Martial Army will surely be yours for the taking. Thus, civil officials and military generals, soldiers and commoners all will pledge their loyalty. The third prince, great success is certain. Minute Zishan, his face flushed with excitement, firmly grasped my hand. The Lianhua flower, His Majesty's view of the state of Chu is. I grasped his hand in return, feeling only cold dampness in both our palms. His Majesty is compassionate and cannot bear to see the people suffer the ravages of war. He strongly advocates for peace. Minute Zishan's face gradually darkened. Lianhua, but I cannot advocate for peace. He raised his eyes, gazing at me with burning intensity. His Majesty has pursued peace for over a decade now, though each negotiation has proven effective, preventing any outbreak of war. Yet times have changed. He slammed his fist against the car window. In the past, the state of Chu was weak. Their willingness to advocate for peace wasn't because they didn't want war, but because they didn't dare to fight. But now, they've been sharpening their weapons and training their horses. Their national power flourishing, they must be eyeing our kingdom's magnificent rivers and mountains with covetous intent. If we persist in seeking peace at this moment, not only will it be futile, but it will only make Chu despise our kingdom even more and stir greater greed in their hearts. Looking at his clenched fists, a sudden fear welled up in my heart. I couldn't help but embrace him, my body trembling slightly. He patted my shoulder gently and said in a soft voice, "Don't worry. Before I leave, I'll have a sincere talk with His Majesty. I won't act rashly." After seeing him off, I remained at home in a state of restless anxiety. At first, I still received daily letters from him assuring his safety, but later, 5 days, 10 days, 20 days, I went a full month without any news from him. Distraught, I kept fumbling even my most skilled embroidery, until a perfectly good orchid under moonlight was stained crimson by my bleeding fingertips, transforming into plum blossoms in snow. On the 30th day, I finally received news of him. At that time, the people of the Minhu residence and I were bound tightly and brought to the execution ground. Before us stood the Crown Prince and Pei Shu, holding the imperial decree with cold smiles on their faces. Traitor Minute Zishan, in defiance of the imperial command, privately mobilized the Shunwu army to attack the state of Chu without authorization, resulting in a crushing defeat. The emperor was furious and issued an edict ordering the execution of everyone in the Marquis Min's household. Pei Shu slowly walked up to me, looking down at me from above. "Lianhua, how about it? You couldn't escape my grasp after all. Tell me, where is Minute Zishan?" The Crown Prince burst into laughter. He led a troop deep into the Chu kingdom's desert and vanished without a trace. By now, he's probably dead in that wasteland. Pei Shu leaned against the Crown Prince, giggling coquettishly. "In a moment, I'll have the executioner strike swiftly. Perhaps you'll catch up with him at the Bridge of Helplessness." Amid their wild laughter, the incense stick burned out, and the midday sun shone directly upon my head. I looked up at the azure sky and let out a bitter laugh. "Lianhua, in this lifetime, you've lost again." At high noon, blood splashed across the execution ground as dozens of heads rolled on the earth, their eyes still wide open in death. "Lianhua, I came too late." Minute Zishan stood trembling before me, his face smeared with blood. Just as I found myself staring blankly at the severed heads of Chu soldiers scattered around me, he glanced at me, then suddenly pointed at one particularly ferocious-looking head and laughed. "Look, that's the Chu army's commander." I chased him for 3 days and nights before finally cutting off his head, gazing at the sea of blood and dismembered limbs. I somehow found myself laughing through my tears. Later, Minute Zishan told me that after arriving at the border, he had initially intended to reluctantly continue peace negotiations with the state of Chu, but that very night, a drunken Chu general recklessly stormed into a border village and assaulted a young girl from Yu. Enraged, the girl's parents rallied the villagers, who beat the Chu general to death with clubs. This act infuriated the Chu commander who had come to negotiate. Ignoring Minute Zishan's pleas, he defiantly led his troops to massacre the entire village before withdrawing triumphantly back to Chu. Minute Zishan held me and said, "Lian Hua, you haven't seen what the village has become, blood everywhere, severed limbs everywhere, their eyes filled with hatred." His gaze was full of sorrow. They hate not only the Chu army, but also me, the divine martial army, and even His Majesty, we who were supposed to protect them. At that moment, I finally saw clearly into my own heart. I wanted to fight. 5 days later, Minute Zishan led a group of divine martial army soldiers willing to follow him and tracked down the Chu army's main commander. After a desperate battle, they finally crushed the Chu army and slew its commander. This great victory delighted the emperor, who bestowed the divine martial army tiger tally upon Minute Zishan, relying on him more and more in the following years. Although the crown prince and Pei Shu frequently caused trouble, with my precognition and Minute Zishan's widespread popularity, we always managed to get through safely, albeit with some close calls. On the day our eldest son was born, the crown prince finally lost his patience. He gathered his maternal family's forces and brazenly launched a palace coup. That day, the streets were ablaze with fire, and the shouts of countless soldiers echoed in my ears. Pei Shu took advantage of the chaos to slip into my room, madly slashing my personal maidservant before grinning hideously and thrusting the dagger toward me and my child. At the critical moment, Minute Zishan rushed back and stabbed Pei Shu to death with a single thrust of his sword, holding me and the child. He shed tears. "Lian Hua, don't be afraid, I'm back. From this day forward, you need never fear again. You and I stand at the pinnacle, and none can harm us now." The crown prince was slain by the divine martial army during the rebellion, and the emperor, overcome with grief, collapsed on the spot. In his final moments, he revealed Minute Zishan's true identity to the court ministers and named him the new emperor. I assisted Minute Zishan, gaining widespread renown, and the late emperor decreed that I should be made empress. Minute Zishan glanced at my expression. "Hey, Hua, what's wrong? What's upsetting you?" I buried my head in his chest. "Minute Zishan, I'm no longer your lucky star." After giving birth to the child, I discovered that all those fragments in my mind had instantly vanished, disappearing without a trace. Minute Zishan's arms around me suddenly stiffened, and it was only after a long while that I heard his voice above my head. "Lian Hua, you will always be my lucky star." I looked up to see his pitch-black pupils, deep and unfathomable, swirling with something I couldn't comprehend. After Minute Zishan ascended the throne, he became preoccupied with numerous affairs and hadn't visited my palace for a long time. I paid no mind to it, spending my days amusing myself with the child, even repeatedly turning away the state preceptor's requests for audience. The day was graced with a gentle spring breeze, reminding me of the first time I met Minute Zishan. Just as I was smiling at the memories, Minute Zishan walked in carrying a jug of wine. "Empress," he had shed his imperial robes and donned his old attire. Looking every bit the dashing young heir of the Minute Marquisate from back then, he drew me into his embrace and waved for the wet nurse to take the child away. "Today I have some leisure time, so I shall drink freely with the Empress. Your Majesty is in high spirits today. This humble consort naturally must accompany you." He drank a cup himself, then poured another and passed it to me. The wine was fine, clear and mellow. I tilted my head back and drank it all in one gulp. Perhaps it had been too long since I last drank alcohol, just one cup, and I already felt a bit dizzy. "Empress, Empress." Minute Zishan's voice reached my ears. Seeing no response from me, he suddenly collapsed to the ground, covering his face as he began to weep. "It's just that you are far too powerful. The royal advisor has always been your man. All these years, you've been scheming tirelessly on my behalf." Courtiers. The divine martial army, how many civil and military officials have praised you endlessly. Even my late father, on his deathbed, it was you he praised, stubbornly insisting on making you empress. You frighten me. So your Majesty, you've long wanted me dead. It was only because you feared my precognitive abilities that you hesitated to act. After childbirth, when I told you my powers had vanished, you couldn't wait to strike at me. Minute Zishan stared dumbfounded as I slowly rose to my feet. How did you? I smiled faintly. How is it that even Qianji poison couldn't kill me? Is that it, Your Majesty? Don't forget the first time we met, Qianji failed to kill me then too. Minute Zishan slowly collapsed into his chair, blood streaming continuously from his nose and mouth as his entire body convulsed. I picked up the wine flask from the table and, under his utterly terrified gaze, dismantled its hidden mechanism. Your Majesty, on the very day you gifted me that wine flask, I reversed its hidden mechanism. From then on, should you harbor no ill will toward me, this flask would remain harmless, but should you ever plot my death, it would become your own fatal poison. I approached Minute Zishan as his breathing grew faint, carefully wiping the blood from his face before gently closing his unseeing eyes. Minute Zishan, you're too strong, so strong it terrifies me. That's why I can only rest easy when you're dead. The night breeze was cool as I surveyed the empty palace halls. This was the highest point in the entire imperial city, where the heights grow too cold to bear. I scaled the high walls of the Pei residence, then the walls of the Minute Marquis's estate, and finally the towering ramparts of the imperial city until at last I arrived here. From this moment onward, no one would ever loom over me again, filling me with fear and dread. In the night breeze, I lay down upon the ground and murmured to myself, Lianhua, from now on, you'll be able to sleep soundly. The second story. Before Fu Chen departed for battle, I asked him one final time, on the day of your triumphant return, General, will you marry me? He remained silent for a moment before saying, all right. Both the system and I gasped simultaneously. Oh no, wasn't it agreed that after being rejected 100 times, I could return to the real world? As it turned out, it was all just a false alarm. The two armies faced off, and I became the sacrificial substitute for his white moonlight. Fu Chen spent 3 days with that woman before remembering me. What he heard, however, was news of my death in battle. Host, there's really no need to rush. Today is your birthday. No one wants to be rejected on their birthday. In the silent courtyard of the prince's residence, the sound of rustling wind could be heard. The sunlight fell upon me, warm and comforting. I had traveled day and night, having just returned from beyond the frontier, and dragged my exhausted self to find Fu Chen. No other reason. After 7 years in this world, I want to go home. I just need to be rejected by Fu Chen 100 times, and I can return to the real world. What a coincidence, the system just told me there's only one rejection left. A few steps away in the courtyard, a woman's delicate and moving sobs could be heard. Ah Chen. I know you've already been intimate with that female physician. She's served you for 3 years, it's only right she becomes your official wife. I really shouldn't disturb you, but I can't help myself. The response was a long silence. This woman was Fu Chen's first love, Wan Ling, all these years. The reason I've been rejected by Fu Chen time and again is mostly thanks to her. Fu Chen lowered his gaze, resting it on the woman's graceful, boneless figure. When did you return? Let me welcome you back. And in what capacity does His Highness wish to welcome me? Wan Ling smiled self-deprecatingly. This humble woman dares not trouble your highness. I only ask that you come drink a cup of wedding wine on my wedding day with my betrothed. Fu Chen's large hand resting beside the tea table suddenly clenched, his dark eyes swirling with icy jealousy and resentment. Betrothed, Wan Ling, who would dare marry you besides this prince? Tears welled in Wan Ling's eyes as she said, better to be a poor man's wife than a nobleman's concubine. If your highness cannot give me your promise, then let me go. Their quarrel ended in mutual displeasure. Everyone in the manor sighed. His Highness knows full well how strong-willed Miss Wan is. Asking her to share a husband with another woman is no different than pushing her to her death. As soon as the words were spoken, they noticed me standing just a few steps away and immediately fell silent. The system cheered, "Oh ho, host, hurry and rush in while he's in a bad mood, beg him to marry you." Guaranteed rejection. In the past, I would never have chosen this moment to invite trouble. But the emotions that had lain dormant for years began to surge and boil the moment I returned home. I think I'm truly homesick. I pushed the door open urgently. Fu Chen sat there alone. The warm spring light streaming through the half-open window, illuminating a corner, yet it couldn't clearly illuminate Fu Chen's features. He leaned back with his eyes closed, his tone unfriendly. "What are you here for?" "See." I rushed back covered in dust on my birthday, yet he only finds me in the way. My palms were sweating with nervousness. "Your Highness, you're going to war tomorrow. This departure has no known return date. I don't want to leave with regrets." My fingers turned white as I clenched my fists. "Does the promise you once made to me still hold, Your Highness?" In the real world, I was a medical student, so when I came to this world, I resolutely chose to become a military doctor. The first time I met Fu Chen was when he rode alone through enemy lines to save me, like a god descending to earth. From that day onward, whenever he went to battle, I stayed behind to tend to the wounded soldiers. I've lost count of how many times I've traced the wounds and scars on Fu Chen's body. At the brink of death, Fu Chen once grasped my hand and promised, "Chu Tang, when we return, I'll marry you." So, I want to ask, does the promise he made to me still stand? The system has exploded into chaos inside my head. I finally completed the mission. I'm getting promoted. Yay 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 yay. Fu Chen's pitch-black eyes reflected my silhouette. A slight frown betrayed his displeasure. I took a deep breath, lowered my head, and waited quietly for him to say the answer I wanted to hear. Truth be told, after liking someone for so long, being rejected hurts quite badly. But the system promised me money, lots and lots of money, real-world spendable cash. Okay, what? The system's cheers came to an abrupt halt. I looked up in astonishment, meeting Fu Chen's utterly composed gaze. He slowly rubbed the teacup between his fingers. I said, "It's acceptable. This prince will marry you as my principal wife." Seconds later, both the system and I simultaneously uttered a national curse. Damn. I returned to my small courtyard, and the accumulated resentment finally erupted, popping champagne halfway through. "You're really your boss's model employee." The system also bristled with anger. "It's all your fault. Why did you have to remind him of his past promises? Can't you keep your cheap male emotions in check?" My head was splitting with pain, and the exhaustion from treating the wounded for days had drained all my energy. I leaned weakly against the bed. The system timidly suggested, "How about you beg for his favor now?" I sneered, "How about I beg him to die instead? If only it were that easy." The creators of this game had eliminated all possibilities of exploiting loopholes from the very beginning. Words like favor and death were among the restricted terms that couldn't be mentioned. Moreover, the reasons given couldn't be repeated. Being rejected in marriage had become one of the few usable methods left after 7 years. The situation had reached a deadlock. I stared at the carefree birds outside the window, contemplating what request I could make next that would inevitably be rejected. In the end, an unexpected guest arrived in my courtyard. It was Ruan Ling. "Miss Chu, pleased to meet you." I leaned against the bedpost without moving, faced with my silence. Ruan Ling let out a light laugh, sounding somewhat pleased with herself. "You probably don't know me very well, but that's all right. I know you quite well. I've tasted the plain noodles you made for His Highness, and worn the undergarments you sewed for him with your own hands. Last time when he celebrated your birthday with you, he came to me with your hair still caught on his button." My tone was icy. "So what?" Ruan Ling let out a light laugh. "Are you truly foolish or just pretending? Haven't you understood? On your birthday last year, I was beneath His Highness, lost in pleasure. This year, I deliberately chose your birthday to return, and he even forgot your special day. Do I need to continue explaining who His Highness truly loves?" I stared at my own face in the bronze mirror. 7 years had passed, and fine lines had appeared at the corners of my eyes. Once, her eyes would always crinkle at the sight of Fu Chen, but now they were filled with numbness. I took a deep breath. "There's no need, because Fu Chen and I are getting married." Ruan Ling froze, then suddenly spoke sharply. "Miss Chu, you don't have to say such things to provoke me. You can't win against me." Fu Chen's attendant knocked on the door, standing meekly outside, where Ruan Ling couldn't see. "Miss Chu, His Highness requests your presence later to select wedding dress patterns." I asked softly, "Will His Highness be there too?" "You are the apple of His Highness's eye, of course he will be there." I closed the door and saw Ruan Ling's face, pale as paper, the corners of my lips curled up. "Ruan Ling, I hope you'll prove yourself worthy. Don't disappoint me." That night, I waited for a long time, but Ruan Ling never came to my door. Fu Chen had been drinking, and he came to my room late at night. Ignoring my resistance, he pinned me to the bed, his scorching kisses covering my skin. He seemed particularly eager. But at the last moment, I pushed Fu Chen away. "Your Highness must set off for battle tomorrow. You should rest early." Fu Chen seemed somewhat unsatisfied, seeing me turn my back and pull the blanket tighter around myself. Fu Chen fell silent for a long while before sighing. "Fine." Truth be told, I wasn't asleep at all. I was actually talking to the system. Did I speak too harshly during the day? Has Ruan Ling retreated in the face of difficulties? That shouldn't be the case. From what I know of Ruan Ling, she would rather die than give up on Fu Chen. The next morning, Fu Chen unusually didn't go to the military camp and instead had breakfast with me. As a military doctor, I was required to accompany the troops on campaigns, The wedding attire had already been chosen. The day of triumphant return would be our joyous wedding day. Fu Chen spoke up. Tang Tang, once we return victorious from this battle, you shall become my princess consort. From then on, stay home properly to care for your husband and children. Don't go to the military camp anymore. When Wan Ling used to follow him, she was wild at heart, constantly running off to the military camp every few days. For so many years, his subordinates thought I was imitating Wan Ling to please him. The system commanded in my mind, that one, I want eggs. I lowered my eyes. All right, Fu Chen spoke as if addressing his ministers. From now on, I'll take leave 3 times a month to return home and accompany you. The rest of the time, I'll stay in the military camp. Don't come looking for me. The system wailed. I don't want noodles. Give me roast chicken. I smiled faintly. All right. Fu Chen frowned as he watched me set down my chopsticks obediently and fall silent. Chu Tang, what? Fu Chen stared at me. You weren't like this before. What's wrong today? Did you hear what I just said clearly? To be honest, I didn't catch a single word of the nonsense he just spouted. I heard you clearly. Fu Chen's tightly pressed lips betrayed his inner irritation. Look, he's utterly unwilling to marry me. I curled my lips into a smile. Your Highness, since our troops are dividing into 2 paths this time and I won't be in your army, would you wish me a safe return? Fu Chen snapped out of his thoughts. After a moment, he spoke. Return safely. I turned and walked out. System, hey, how boring. I thought he couldn't speak. It's been 7 years since I transmigrated here, and this country has been at war for 7 years. Fortunately, our side is powerful and rarely suffers defeat. With Fu Chen standing guard, it felt like having divine assistance. On the way there, I was still thinking of ways to make Fu Chen reject me, but I never imagined that on this final campaign, I wouldn't make it back at all, because Wan Ling appeared in our military entourage. Disguised as an inconspicuous soldier, it wasn't until they had traveled for 10 days that they were discovered. Before the military generals could summon Fu Chen, Wan Ling was abruptly kidnapped by the enemy forces. The kidnappers demanded Fu Chen to come in person for the exchange, plus the cession of 10 cities. General Zhong returned while a light rain was falling from the sky. He looked hesitant, somewhat uncertain. I could tell he had something difficult to say. Given how much General Zhong had looked after me during my years in the army, I spoke up. Whatever request you have, General Zhong, feel free to speak your mind. Your Highness, Miss Wan, she's been injured. The enemy demands we send military doctors over. As you know, our doctors, they're all elderly and frail. I fear they won't last until reinforcements arrive, so I am the best candidate. Yes, General Zhong's expression darkened. If it were just her alone, it would be one thing. But we've just learned that Miss Wan is carrying royal blood in her womb. I laughed at myself mockingly. The words were spoken with deliberate ambiguity. Who didn't know that royal blood meant Fu Chen's child? Over the years, the Fu imperial family has had few descendants, making children's significance to Fu Chen and even to His Majesty the current emperor self-evident. This was a matter worth risking one's life to save. General Zhong's eyes were red-rimmed. Your Highness, no, Miss Chu. You must conceal your identity and wait for His Highness's reinforcements. As a mere military physician, the enemy likely won't trouble you. The soldiers all bowed their heads, their faces showed indignation, but for that child's sake, there was no other choice. The system was screaming chaotically in my mind. Host, this is no joke. If they discover your identity as the Crown Prince's betrothed, they'll surely torture you to death. If you die accidentally here, you'll never get back. Yet I had witnessed firsthand the tyranny of the Fu imperial clan. What if angering the emperor over a single child leads to General Zhong and his 800 soldiers being executed? I cannot bear it. I'll go. General Zhong's eyes reddened. Miss Chu, it's our incompetence. It's not your fault. I hoisted my medical kit and turned to walk into the rain. This stretch of road felt endlessly long. I passed through armored soldiers, walking alone beneath the oppressive dark clouds under their watchful gazes. The enemy soldiers glared fiercely, their intentions far from benign. Through the drizzling rain, I saw the woman held in the enemy general's embrace. Her deathly pale complexion couldn't conceal her peerless beauty. Her long black hair clung to her ears, her large eyes brimming with pitiful vulnerability. She desperately shielded her abdomen, pleading, "Please, I beg you, save me. I'm with child. Don't kill me." The system warned. Host, this woman means to harm you. We gazed at each other through the curtain of rain. An indescribable bitterness churned in my heart. The vicious man pierced her skin with his dagger, blood gushing forth. Hurry up and get over here to take a look at this little bitch. Wan Ling widened her eyes in terror, staring at me. Chu Tang, I beg you, I can't die. Or Fu Chen will go mad. If he finds out you didn't save me, he'll hate you forever." The man narrowed his eyes. "Fu Chen, what are you to Fu Chen?" My heart skipped a beat. Then, Wan Ling burst into tears and spilled everything like pouring beans from a sack. "She is Fu Chen's princess consort. They'll marry as soon as he returns victorious from battle. Ha 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 ha, truly effortless gains come without toil." The man grabbed Wan Ling by the throat, threw her off the horse. Then whipped his steed and charged toward me. I turned and ran desperately back the way I'd come, only to feel a sudden tightness in my abdomen as the whip lashed across my stomach. A rough voice boomed, loud enough to make my eardrums ache. "I've captured Fu Chen's consort. This battle is ours, you." He pointed at the terrified Wan Ling and sneered. "Go back and tell Fu Chen that if he wants his consort returned unharmed, he must not only cede 10 cities but also sever both his legs." Wan Ling stared at my bloodless face in horror, staggered back 2 steps, then suddenly turned and ran toward our army's direction, bound and helpless. I was thrown onto horseback. At the last moment, I faintly saw Fu Chen riding towards me on horseback. He bent down, scooped up the unconscious Wan Ling, and held her securely in his arms. Inside Fu Chen's military tent, the crowd fell deathly silent. A subordinate hurried in. "Your Highness, General Zhong was ordered to scout the enemy camp but hasn't returned yet. What should we do now?" Fu Chen gazed at the slender jade-like hand extending from the bedding, tightly clasped in his own, his eyes cast downward. "This prince will take Linga back at dawn. You stay here and await General Zhong. This debt has yet to be settled with him." It was bad enough that Zhong Zishan wasn't here, but to leave behind a bunch of fools who knew nothing when questioned. Looking at Wan Ling lying unconscious, Fu Chen felt a sharp pang in his heart. When he learned that Wan Ling had hidden herself in the army just to see him and was nearly captured by enemy forces, he was terrified out of his wits. The woman in her sleep seemed extremely restless, her face still streaked with dried tears. Fu Chen gently brushed aside Wan Ling's hair. "Why wasn't I informed earlier that she was pregnant? Do you all have a death wish? Your Highness, forgive us, General Zhong." Upon learning of Miss Wan's pregnancy, had already sent a female physician to the enemy camp overnight to care for her, but the physician did not return with Miss Wan, and I fear the worst has happened. Fu Chen had no mind for such matters. Just a medical maid dead is dead. Make sure the condolence silver is properly delivered to her family. The woman on the bed groaned softly and slowly opened her eyes. At the first sight of Fu Chen, she shrank into his arms like a startled fawn. "My prince, I thought I'd never see you again." Fu Chen's expression softened tenderly. "Linga, you've been with child for over a month now. Look into my eyes and tell me, whose is it?" Wan Ling's eyes reddened. "My lord, you know the answer better than anyone." Fu Chen held her tightly. "Is Chu Tang present? Summon her to examine Linga's pulse." Half an hour later, "My lord, the military physician has arrived. Come in." The tent flap lifted, revealing an elderly military doctor nearing 70. Fu Chen furrowed his brows. "Why is it you?" The old physician was mute, merely trembling as he handed over a letter, his expression urgent, addressed for Fu Chen's eyes only. It bore Chu Tang's handwriting. "1 incense sticks time ago. Enemy General Tuoba Lu had someone shoot an arrow carrying Chu Tang's handwritten letter into the military tent, that happened to be his own tent. The only informed party, General Zhong, and his subordinate officers were absent from camp, left alone with this mute man. When summoned by Fu Chen, the old army physician hastily tucked away the letter and rushed over. Fu Chen looked at Chu Tang's belongings, feeling nothing but irritation in his heart. Opening the letter, he found only a single hastily scrawled line, stained with dark red smears and watermarks. "I've been captured by the enemy. Save me." Wan Ling's heart tightened as she read the letter's contents. "Your Highness, is the princess consort still angry with me?" "What do you mean?" Biting her lip with a guilty expression, Wan Ling said, "Last night, this concubine spoke out of turn. The princess consort must resent my improper words and actions, which is why she refuses to examine my pulse." Fu Chen found it utterly absurd. If she didn't want to treat Linga, so be it, but to fabricate such an outrageous lie was beyond reason. Ridiculous. Forget it. Since she refuses to treat Linga, I'll take Linga back tonight. With these words, Fu Chen picked up Wan Ling, wrapped her tightly in his cloak, and strode into the night. I don't know how many days I've been in the water dungeon. The ropes had rubbed my flesh raw, and after soaking in filthy water, the wounds were beginning to fester. The enemy leader's name was Tuoba Lu. He had been defeated by Fu Chen many times over the years. He harbored a deep hatred for Fu Chen. He forbade the army doctors from treating me. and in moments of excitement, he would brandish his whip, leaving me covered in wounds. The moment he entered the water dungeon today, he angrily lashed out at me. What a clever trick of substitution. You're truly a worthless decoy. It's been an hour since the letter was sent. Yet Fu Chen hasn't even acknowledged it. How dare you conspire with that woman to deceive me? I was in a daze, unable to even lift my eyes. I didn't deceive you, if you were truly Fu Chen's princess consort. How could he remain indifferent? I let out a bitter laugh. Because you shouldn't have released Wan Ling, you let her go deliver the message. What do you mean? As my laughter turned into coughing, blood spilled from my lips. Do you know whose child Wan Ling carries? By sending her to deliver news. I could die before Fu Chen ever receives word. No wonder you lost to Fu Chen, something so obvious, and you failed to notice. Tuoba Lu suddenly seized my throat with savage fury. What? You think provoking me into killing you will bring you liberation? I refuse to grant you such satisfaction. The system covered its eyes in terror. We all knew the fate that awaited those who fell into the hands of these vile men. I suddenly grabbed Tuoba Lu's hand. Let me see him one last time. I want to speak with him. Tuoba Lu revealed a peculiar smile. Given the circumstances, you still refuse to give up. Very well, in 3 days, I will negotiate peace with Fu Chen. I'll take you there then, so you may die with clarity. 3 days passed in a flash, and I was taken by Tuoba Lu to a certain house. This place lies at the border between the two armies. Each side brought a contingent of troops, clad in barely sufficient clothing. I knelt behind Tuoba Lu's screen. My mouth was gagged. When Fu Chen entered, he brought a woman with him, Wan Ling. Tuoba Lu laughed heartily. Since ancient times, even heroes cannot escape the allure of beauty. It seems this lady is the one who has made you. Fu Chen, bow your head. Wan Ling cautiously hid in Fu Chen's embrace, on the verge of tears. Tuoba Lu said with ill intent, but I heard, my prince, that your consort is not this woman. A few days ago, I captured a woman whose appearance happens to resemble the consort. Would you care to take a look, Your Highness? Upon hearing this, Fu Chen's expression remained utterly unreadable, until the screen was removed, revealing my battered body. Fu Chen's eyes narrowed sharply as he clenched his fists tightly. Moments later, he gradually relaxed his posture and donned a languid smile. General Tuoba, what nonsense are you speaking? My princess consort clearly returned to the capital several days ago. Am I right? Linger. Wan Ling lowered her head, hiding her flickering gaze. Yes, the day before yesterday, this humble one spoke out of turn to the princess consort, who in her anger returned to the capital. I don't know where General Tuoba found someone who looks so similar. Tuoba's smile froze, then his laughter grew louder and louder. He ordered the gag removed from my mouth. Your Highness, it seems they think you're an imposter. Why don't you speak to him? He seemed intrigued, staring at my face as he drove the dagger into my spine. Excruciating pain shot through me, drawing a muffled groan, pressing against my neck. He trembled with excitement. See how I treat you. Yet he remains unmoved. Why not follow me instead, my prince? Warm liquid trickled down my back, soaking through my garments. Gasping weakly, I raised my head and met Fu Chen's obsidian dark eyes. Fu Chen, save me. Fu Chen's voice was icy cold. You act quite convincingly, but unfortunately, she would never beg me like a dog. My teeth chattered from the pain. Fu Chen, for 7 whole years, look into my eyes and tell me you don't recognize me. Fu Chen pressed his lips together. How dare you? What kind of spy dares to mock this prince? I laughed out loud, the slight movement tugging at my wounds, sending waves of pain that made me tremble. Whether you truly don't recognize it or dare not admit it, we both know the truth in our hearts. If you wish to believe Wan Ling is pure and innocent by nature, then believe it. I have no strength to argue. The pain made my vision darken as I leaned my head sideways against the ground, trying to ease my suffering. At most, I'm about to die. Let me ask one last thing. Fu Chen, will you take me home? Fu Chen's fingers clenched tightly, turning white as if he had made up his mind about something. Wishful thinking. This prince will not bring a spy home. A sharp sound. It was the sword Wan Ling personally thrust into my abdomen. Her eyes blurred with tears. She shook her head. Stop bewitching the prince. You're fake. You're fake. Ding. Mission accomplished. Rejected by the male lead 100 times. Congratulations, host. On completing the mission, rewards are being calculated. My body temperature slowly merged with the earth, gradually turning cool, then cold. A group of people suddenly rushed in from outside. Your Highness the Princess Consort. This humble officer has arrived late. Ha, it was General Zhong. Yu Guangzhong's retainer Fu Chen suddenly stood up, his face deathly pale. He watched helplessly as General Zhong kicked Tuoba Lu aside and gathered me into his arms. I opened my mouth weakly, my voice faint. Ding, settlement complete. Mission reward 80 million, severe injury compensation 30 million. Total 110 million yuan, special reward talent point, peerless divine physician, countdown 3 seconds, preparing to exit the world, welcome back to the real world, wish you a pleasant life. In this world, Chu Tang finally closed his eyes, breath ceased, the body lay there limp, thin and small, clothes soaked in blood. General Zhong's tears fell like rain, while the soldiers behind him had reddened eyes. Fu Chen didn't realize his body was trembling. General Zhong, what exactly happened? General Zhong choked back sobs. Several days ago, Lady Wan was captured. Tuoba Lu sent word demanding female medics from our camp to preserve the child in Lady Wan's womb. The princess consort volunteered to go, and has been held captive ever since. This humble officer arrived too late, failing to keep my promise, to bring the princess consort home. A deafening buzz filled Fu Chen's head as all the blood in his body seemed to freeze solid. Fu Chen, for 7 whole years. Look me in the eyes and tell me you don't recognize me. Whether you truly don't recognize me or simply dare not admit it, we both know the truth in our hearts. If you choose to believe Wan Ling is pure and innocent, then believe it. I have no strength left to argue. Soon I'll be dead anyway. Let me ask you one last thing. Fu Chen, will you take me home? Fu Chen felt his world collapsing before him, his chest clogged with something hot and suffocating, churning violently. He barely managed to steady himself against the table, his voice low and hoarse. What did she say just now? General Zhong fell silent for a moment before relaying Chu Tang's dying words. That year when heavy snow sealed the mountains, the man I dragged out of the wolf den after 3 days and nights of struggle, consider him already dead in that blizzard. Thud, Fu Chen spat out a mouthful of blood, then, he collapsed stiffly. As the darkness faded, I found myself holding a bouquet of flowers. The blazing sunlight filtered through the plane trees, scattering dazzling specks of light. I remember. In the height of summer that year, I had just graduated from medical school. The senior I secretly admired came to attend my graduation ceremony. A hand reached out before me, its owner wore a gentle smile. I heard you've made remarkable achievements in interventional therapy research for cardiovascular diseases. May I get to know you? Gazing at the long-lost sunlight, I felt as if a lifetime had passed. A tear suddenly rolled down my cheek. Tears fell like rain in an instant. The senior froze for a moment, flustered as he pulled out tissues. Tang, what's wrong? Did I say something wrong? I shook my head. No, then you. I wiped away my tears and smiled. I just wanted to return to this place. It's been so long. Fu Chen had barely woken up when he rushed out of the military tent. Wan Ling followed behind him, her voice hoarse with desperation. My lord, are you abandoning your concubine? Fu Chen remained unmoved, even shoving her to the ground in the struggle. By the time Wan Ling looked up, Fu Chen's figure had already disappeared from sight. Your Highness, please take care of your health. Once you've recovered. Fu Chen's voice was terrifyingly cold. Where is Chu Tang? Your Highness, tell me where she went. His hands were trembling. Just a woman, do you think she could deal me any real blow? After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, Fu Chen stumbled into the mortuary and immediately spotted a corpse laid out in the center, covered with a white cloth, laid alongside other fallen soldiers. General Zhong, a rough man, had been silently weeping with swollen eyes. Fu Chen's hands trembled as he lifted the cloth, revealing that all too familiar face, deathly pale, lying there quietly with eyes closed. Fu Chen seemed to suddenly have all his strength drained away, clutching Chu Tang's hand, his voice turned hoarse. Has the imperial physician seen him? Why wasn't the imperial physician summoned from the capital? Why, I was too late. General Zhong choked back tears. Your Highness, have you forgotten? The princess consort was stabbed to death by Miss Wan right before your eyes. By the time we arrived, she had already endured over 10 days of torture. Fu Chen suddenly turned his head. Snarling viciously, she refused to appear in the enemy camp. Wan Ling said she'd return to the capital. She couldn't possibly be Chu Tang. General Zhong's face turned ashen. Your Highness, this humble officer personally watched her walk out, the princess consort. She truly ventured into the enemy camp to save the unborn child in Miss Wan's womb, only to meet this catastrophic end. Impossible. Fu Chen's mind buzzed as he turned to touch Chu Tang's face. It can't be, Tang. It's not true, right? If what Zhong Zishan said was true, it meant he had witnessed Chu Tang's death. But sadly, Chu Tang could no longer speak. her face and body bore wounds that would never heal. Fu Chen, his eyes red, slowly uncovered everything. Her body was covered in bruises and knife wounds. The blood loss had left her skin deathly pale, her face still bore an expression of agony. One could imagine how desperate she must have been in her final moments. Zhong Zishan wiped away his tears. Your Highness, the princess consort must have really wanted to marry you. She once said that when the two of you were wed, she wanted this humble servant to bring the children along for a celebratory drink. Fu Chen trembled violently as he carried Chu Tang's lifeless body, walking out in utter devastation. Ruan Ling threw herself before Fu Chen, weeping as she asked, Your Highness, what in heaven's name has happened to you? Fu Chen's gaze slowly shifted to rest upon Ruan Ling's face. That tear-streaked face now filled him with irritation. Chu Tang is dead. Was it really Miss Chu? Ruan Ling trembled, her eyes widening in shock. A single tear hung perfectly from her lower lashes, making her appear pitifully delicate. She kept shrinking into Fu Chen's embrace. They're so terrifying, my lord. Those barbarians are horrifying. Won't you hold me? Fu Chen didn't move. You knew how terrifying they were, yet you left her there alone. Ruan Ling froze completely, staring at Fu Chen in disbelief. Fu Chen suddenly shoved her away. Aren't you getting married? Then go ahead, don't cling to this prince. Your Highness. Ruan Ling burst into tears. Don't push me away, I beg you. Fu Chen stood up. Since you already have a fiancé, this prince will do you a favor and arrange your wedding soon. May you and him enjoy eternal harmony. The hidden guards restrained Ruan Ling's limbs. She panicked. Your Highness. No, I don't want to marry that cripple. I was just saying it. I wanted to make you jealous. I wanted to marry you. Fu Chen wiped his contaminated fingers with disgust, then carefully picked up Chu Tang and disappeared into the night. Late night, Prince's Manor. Since returning from the peace negotiations, Fu Chen had been sitting motionless before Chu Tang's memorial altar for 7 full days and nights. General Zhong, His Highness hasn't taken a single drop of water again today. What should we do? General Zhong stood like a statue, gazing ahead. With the princess consort newly departed, it's only natural His Highness is heartbroken. We must do our best to persuade him. That woman. General Zhong shot a glance at his subordinate. Who dares mention her in this mansion now? Have you no regard for your life? But she's crying and begging to see His Highness, especially since she's carrying his child. Silence, General Zhong said in a low voice. Earlier, someone already sent abortion medicine inside. Let's not mention this matter again. If that woman makes trouble, just keep an eye on her. Don't let her disturb the princess's peace. Understood. Fu Chen sat inside, hearing every movement outside clearly, but he was exhausted. He didn't even have the strength to lift his hand. He couldn't understand how he and Chu Tang had come to this point, separated forever by life and death. Now in the stillness, Fu Chen's heart ached unbearably. A face floated before his eyes. Chu Tang. Fu Chen couldn't quite distinguish the complex emotions swirling within him at this moment. He thought he loved Ruan Ling, yet now he hated her to the marrow of his bones. He considered Chu Tang dispensable, yet since her death, longing had become like a rusted long sword, carving through his flesh. He felt a thick stack of letters beneath his fingers. Over the years, he had fought battles north and south, expanding territories far and wide. Chu Tang had also become an army medic, saving lives and earning widespread gratitude. At times when they were apart, heartfelt letters became their only bridge, carrying whispers of longing across the distance. The topmost letter was from half a year ago. Chu Tang, from the far northern lands, sent a letter home. The matter is settled, return at once. At the end of the letter, a symbol was appended. Chu Tang said it was a smiling face. She also asked him if he'd like to admire the autumn scenery with her. As the maple leaves in the capital were turning red, he still remembered the day Chu Tang arrived, travel-worn and weary, with mud staining the hem of his clothes. Her footsteps were light and quick as she passed through the corridor, with servants panting breathlessly as they hurried after her. Just because he promised to accompany her in viewing the autumn maples, Chu Tang traveled day and night to return to the capital when the scenery was at its most splendid. She had always been considerate to the smallest detail. 7 years, unknowingly, Chu Tang had accompanied him for 7 years, longer than Ruan Ling had been with him. Fu Chen was well aware that Chu Tang was a qualified and sensible candidate for princess consort. She didn't possess many belongings. He doesn't really have any hobbies. The only notebook is filled with records of his preferences. Fu Chen dislikes lamb, doesn't care for sweets, but enjoys spicy food. Below is a small handwritten note. But common lamb is absolutely delicious. Sweet Tooth here thinks desserts are amazing. Hate chili peppers, bad for my stomach. He doesn't like others touching things in his study. I accidentally touched something while cleaning. He'd probably dislike me if I told him. He doesn't like others reading The Romance of the Western Chamber. If I invite him to read it together, would he refuse? The last sentence, he has a white moonlight. He doesn't like me. Memories of the past suddenly came flooding back. She carefully pushed the cumin lamb and the freshly bought candied fruits in front of him, her eyes sparkling, hoping he would take a bite. One spring day, she quietly pushed open the door and cautiously asked, "Would you like to watch The Romance of the Western Chamber with me?" And then there were the times she unintentionally messed up his study. Each of these little things was Chu Tang begging him for what she called tolerance and love. But what about him? He had made a habit of rejecting her. And when he saw her face flushed red from eating spicy peppers and asking to change the dish, he casually remarked, "This prince prefers spicy food." Some things, when looked back upon, reveal just how much of a scoundrel one was at the time. Chu Tang lived through 7 years of such days. Her journal entries grew denser and more detailed with each passing day. Fu Chen looked at those handwritten words, his chest aching with a suffocating pain. Was she molded from clay? Why didn't she have any temper? She persistently recorded a person's likes and dislikes, yet never realized that all the nitpicking stemmed from the other's heartlessness. Fu Chen stayed alone in the room for a long time. The noise of Wan Ling came again and again, until it ended on the day she had an abortion and married another man. On the 7th day after death, he still couldn't wait for the princess to return, yet that face became increasingly clear. Did he love Chu Tang? He didn't before. What about now? He didn't know. His unfortunate childhood, coupled with his father's abnormally strict upbringing, made him more obsessive than ordinary people. He couldn't forget Wan Ling because that was the year he was at his lowest point. Wan Ling was the first person who disregarded his family background and status to approach him. Her voice and smile became anchors in his heart, pulling him blindly through life as he chased after that last remaining warmth. Later came Chu Tang. He speculated endlessly, convinced that Chu Tang was enamored with his power and status, so he split his heart in two, one half to chase the past, one half to test the truth. He believed that as long as he was ruthless enough, heartless enough, he could toy with others' sincerity just like his father did. Yet, those who play with genuine hearts will inevitably face retribution. This moment came 7 years too late, when he realized Chu Tang had loved him steadfastly all along. The suppressed longing, fearfully restrained over countless days and nights, burst forth like floodwaters through a broken dam, overwhelming him completely. The tide receded, and Chu Tang departed. Only the mottled marshland remained, washed bare by the waves. Barren and filthy soil cannot nurture the seedlings of love, so Chu Tang left. This reality was like poison, corroding his very core. He missed her so much, missed her to the point of agony. Fu Chen lay there for a long, long time. Chu Tang's purse was clutched tightly against his chest. Later, his despicable imperial brother sent eunuchs to congratulate him on his wedding. Fu Chen suddenly felt his stomach churn. Staggering to his feet before collapsing to his knees, the violent motion knocked over the wine pot. Clattering sounds rang out. The eunuch left satisfied. Fu Chen vomited until heaven and earth spun darkly, streaks of blood mingling in his sick. The last trace of color drained from her face. He suddenly remembered the day Chu Tang died, her eyes filled with tears. Did she want to say, "It hurts so much," she said. "Will you marry me? Please," she said. "Take me home, okay?" Fu Chen knew he was finished. He fell to his knees, covering his face. "Tang, let me die for you." "Okay, Tang Tang, did you have a nightmare?" Chu Tang suddenly sat up from the desk, looking visibly shaken. Zhao Jiashu reached out and pressed the back of his hand against her forehead. "No fever, but you look pale. Do you want to go back and rest?" Chu Tang closed her eyes briefly, trying hard to push the scenes from her dream to the back of her mind. Nothing much. It had already been 2 months since she returned to the real world. This was the first time she had dreamed of Fu Chen. It seemed he had taken his own life, with that long sword that had accompanied him through years of battlefield campaigns. Chu Tang didn't feel particularly moved by this. "This 7-year-long relationship didn't leave me as heartbroken as I'd imagined." Zhao Jiashu closed the folder. "The teacher's at a seminar today. I'm taking charge and secretly giving you a day off." Over these 2 months, she'd grown accustomed to working alongside Zhao Jiashu. He was tolerant and gentle, always offering just the right amount of consideration during work. Chu Tang wasn't in good condition, so she didn't decline. "Thank you, senior, I'll take my leave now." She picked up her bag, bid farewell to her senior, pushed open the door, and stepped into the sunlight. And then, Chu Tang saw Fu Chen. The dense shade of trees couldn't shield against the sun's scorching intensity. Light passed through Fu Chen's body, leaving no shadow on the ground. The moment his gaze landed on her, Chu Tang suddenly realized something and swiftly averted her eyes before turning to leave. Suddenly, Fu Chen's voice called out from behind her, "You're still alive, A Tang." Chu Tang quickened his pace. Fu Chen's voice was urgent. "A Tang, look at me, will you, talk to me?" As if suddenly struck where it hurt most, Chu Tang came to an abrupt halt. He turned stiffly and retorted, "Yes, I'm alive. I have my own life. Please stay away from me." This was the first time Chu Tang had spoken to Fu Chen in such a tone. Fu Chen stared at her in disbelief. "A Tang, I know I was wrong. I avenged you. Wan Ling is dead. Can you forgive me?" Chu Tang had no desire to continue the conversation and instead began shouting incoherently, System, are you still there?" The long-dormant system awoke. "What's the matter? Holy shit. Why is he here?" "No idea. The moment I came out, I saw him. The mission's already complete, why would he still be in my world?" "Host, give me some time, I'll go ask the programmer." There must be a bug somewhere, this absolutely cannot happen." Fu Chen overheard Chu Tang's conversation with the system. "A Tang. Who's speaking? What mission? A Tang, what exactly are you talking about?" Chu Tang's tone was indifferent. "Haven't you figured it out yet? The reason I've been entangled with you for 7 years is because I accepted a mission. As long as you reject me 100 times, I can return to reality and claim a hefty reward." Fu Chen's head buzzed, and he felt dizzy. "No way, you're lying to me, right?" The system came running back. "Sorry, host, there really was a bug. The programmer said it'll take 3 days to fully restore. You'll have to tough it out with this guy for 3 days. But don't worry, he can't harm you." "Alright, thanks for your hard work." Chu Tang seemed unwilling to spare another glance as she turned and opened the car door. Today was the day her house would be handed over. Located in the best part of the city center, she had hired the finest interior designer. The style was chosen to be bright and boldly contrasting. It was completely different from the world Fu Chen was used to. Fu Chen was forced to stay by Chu Tang's side. On Chu Tang's face, he saw a long-lost vitality. His heart was filled with indescribable emotions. Once, he was the regent prince standing just below the emperor, revered by thousands, a god of war who conquered battlefields. Countless people told him that one love for a lifetime was nothing but a joke. Gradually, even Fu Chen himself came to believe it. Even he grew weary of Chu Tang for a time. He couldn't understand how Chu Tang could neglect him for days just because of a Wan Ling. A noble prince like him shouldn't have to suffer such grievances over a mere woman. Until he arrived in this world, a world more advanced and more civilized than his own. It turned out that Chu Tang had always had a better choice. It turned out that Chu Tang had been the one suffering grievances all along. If given the choice, he would be the one she'd abandon without hesitation. He was never important. After finalizing the renovation plans for her new home with the designer, Chu Tang noticed the sky had long since darkened. She wandered near the neighborhood, bought 2 milk popsicles from a convenience store, and carrying them in hand, walked onto a bridge spanning the river. The bridge was adorned with neon lights that shimmered in dazzling colors. As time passed, she leaned against the railing, dangling an ice pop. Letting the wind tousle her long hair, just like a free bird, Fu Chen stood not far away, his voice hoarse. "A Tang, did you ever love me, or were you just completing a mission?" Chu Tang tilted her head to look at him and asked with a smile, "Do you really think I'm just completing a task?" Fu Chen was left speechless. The wind ruffled Chu Tang's crumpled trench coat. She roughly wiped her face. With a smile, she said, "In the 3rd year after arriving in that world, you risked your life to save me. Nearly losing a leg in the process. I was so moved I cried buckets, wishing I could pledge myself to you in gratitude. You know, I never had parents, no father or mother, and at that time, I was truly grateful this system mission had brought us together." Fu Chen's lips trembled slightly, but he remained silent. "You saw it too." Chu Tang pointed toward the bridge in the distance, where countless lights twinkled like stars. "In this world, I've always been alone, always longing for family, friends, a home. In those early years after we met, there was a noodle shop in Sweetwater Alley outside the prince's manor. Every time I returned, I'd rush there for a bowl. I even knew the owner, Madame Fang, who had a dog named Yuanbao. Right up until the day I left, Yuanbao was still waiting for me." Tang. Chu Tang ignored him and continued speaking. "And General Zhong, I've mooched several meals at their place. His wife makes excellent braised beef, and the general himself is quite the skilled cook. They asked me to be godmother to their unborn child. I'd prepared a Zhuazhou gift for the baby, but never got the chance to deliver it. Oh, right. There's also the cook from the prince's residence, Chuan-Yang. She's resigning next month to go south of the Yangtze River to join her daughter. She once brought me long-shaped mulberries. Sweet as honey. There are many people I know there. I actually, really wanted to stay, but before I knew it, it felt like you rejected me 99 times. Chu Tang's smile stung Fu Chen's eyes. He gripped the bridge railing tightly, his heart aching with each throb. I'm sorry. He couldn't even bring himself to ask the question he most wanted to voice. Chu Tang finished her popsicle and clapped her hands. It's fine. Just stay the full 3 days. All these years. We've never really had a proper conversation. 3 days, not exactly long by any measure, and yet they somehow felt longer than the past 7 years combined. Fu Chen silently watched Chu Tang work, live her life, and visit friends. Only then did he realize that Chu Tang truly had a sweet tooth. She also enjoyed teasing people. When talking about happy things, her eyes would curve into crescent moons. She would rescue cats and dogs by the roadside, buy meals for homeless elders, and when wronged, she'd argue her case so fiercely that her opponents would be left speechless in just 2 or 3 sentences. He had originally thought Chu Tang was a cat without claws. At this moment, he realized he was wrong. Chu Tang was a living, breathing human being. She has her own joys and sorrows. She feels dejected when rejected, and sad when stood up. The person she likes should be like Zhao Jiashu, someone who responds to everything, not some scoundrel who won't even give her dignity. The longer Fu Chen observed, the more silent he became. At first, he could still exchange a few words with Chu Tang occasionally. But eventually he couldn't utter a single sentence. Chu, in the mirror, he saw himself as nothing but a piece of thoroughly rotten flesh. Midnight was about to strike. Chu Tang and he walked one after the other along the tree-lined path. Perhaps he was going to die. The flashback of his life at the moment of suicide suddenly overwhelmed him now. 7 years of time flew swiftly before his eyes. The shadow finally froze into the figure standing before me. Fu Chen heard the distant tolling of a bell. He halted his steps. Chu Tang seemed to sense something too, and stopped as well. Fu Chen asked the question he most wanted to ask. Did it hurt, that day you left? Chu Tang didn't turn around, her voice barely audible. It did. Tuoba Lu stabbed me 3 times, Wan Ling once. Thanks to you, it really hurt quite a bit. The wind blew silently from afar, howling past them. Fu Chen couldn't shed a tear. I feel like I'm dying from the pain. I don't deserve forgiveness. Fu Chen knelt on the ground. Chu Tang, erect a tombstone for me. In my next life, I want to live in your world. Silence answered him. Beneath the night sky, mechanical electronic tones sounded. System upgrade successful. Bugs fixed. Initiating outsider transfer. Countdown 3, 2. Chu Tang didn't turn back, nor did she wait to hear him out. She didn't even give the system time to finish speaking, just paused briefly for a few seconds before continuing forward. The end.